In this segment, I'm going to cover 10 signs and symptoms that you or your partner might be a sex addict, so don't go anywhere. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Recovery TV, a channel where we cover all things mental health, relational health, and recovery. And in this segment, we are talking about sex addiction, particularly the signs and symptoms of sex addiction. Now, one of the most popular videos we did was done about 6 years ago, where I covered 6 signs and symptoms of sex addiction, which still hold true to this day. But in this updated video, I'm going to talk about 10 signs and symptoms of sex addiction. But feel free to go back and watch that other video. I'll put a link right here in the cards so that you can go back and watch it at your leisure. Before we dive into these 10 signs and symptoms of sex addiction, I'd encourage you to please subscribe to our channel, ring that bell so you can be notified when more of these videos are posted. Doing things like subscribing, liking, and sharing the videos, it really does help please the YouTube algorithms, which makes it easier for other people to find this video. Now, let's get into it. As a licensed therapist and a certified sex addiction therapist, we are actually trained to look for these 10 signs or symptoms before we are comfortable diagnosing someone with sex addiction. Just a little disclaimer here. Sex addiction is neither an official diagnosis found in the DSM, nor is it found in the ICD-11. DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders that is published by the APA and is used by mental health professionals to basically have an agreed upon standard for diagnosing mental health conditions. The ICD is very similar to the DSM. It stands for the International Classification of Diseases, and it's published by the World Health Organization. As I mentioned, neither of them have officially made sex addiction a diagnosis, but in the latest version of the ICD-11, compulsive sexual behavior disorder is an official diagnosis in that manual. So no, it's not classified under a dependency, but we are at least starting to acknowledge the problem from a more official capacity. That said, the International Institute for Trauma and Addiction Professionals, also known as IITAP, has published a set of criteria utilized by mental health professionals to better determine if sexually compulsive behavior rises to a certain degree to classify it as sex addiction. And that is the criteria I'm going to go over with you today. So that's my disclaimer on that. I hope that all makes sense. But now let's dive into the first symptom of sex addiction: preoccupation with sexual thoughts. In the previous video I called this sex on the brain. This basically is what it sounds like. It's where someone can't get sex off of their mind. They often think about it all day long or fantasize about it. And sometimes they'll even get preoccupied with how they are going to act out next. In other words, they can't wait to get to the next acting out episode. They look forward to it, but they also might be dreading it at the same time. Those things do coexist with sex addicts. The second sign or symptom is experiencing an escalation in the behavior itself. Escalation is basically an effort by the addict to try to achieve the same level of satisfaction that they once had. And so just like with most addictions, that the first high is always the best, and they're always trying to get back to that high. And as tolerance sets in, the brain basically needs more of these risky type behaviors to achieve higher levels of dopamine. So just for example, someone's sex addiction may have began with pornography, but then it may have escalated into actually reaching out to people online, and then it escalates to meeting up with those people and having sexual encounters, and then maybe they eventually find themselves paying for sex or something like that. So we're looking for those escalation patterns. But in addition to frequency and risk, with porn addicts, they often can escalate in genre. And that's where it kind of gets scary, because if the genre isn't doing the trick for them, then they go to riskier and riskier types of genres, which means they ultimately can end up in certain illegal genres. Number 3, loss of control. This is basically the inability to stop or limit the behavior despite repeated efforts to do so. This is more or less talking about the hijacked brain, which I talk about in the previous video as well. I'm going to put links in the description of this video below if you have an interest in learning more about the hijacked brain. But for our purposes here, what I'm going to say about it is that with addicts, until they have effectively rewired their brain, Their brain remains wired in such a way where that once they are triggered, the brain can take over. And even though their conscious mind is saying, I don't want to do this thing, they still will go ahead and do it because they are no longer in the driver's seat. Now, this does not mean they are not responsible for the decisions that they make when it comes to acting out. But if somebody realizes that they are dealing with a sex addiction, the biggest decision and most important decision that they need to make in that moment is to seek out help, because until they effectively rewire the brain, relapse is a high probability. Number 4, neglecting responsibilities. Given their obsession and preoccupation with their preferred method of sexually acting out, it probably doesn't come as a surprise to you that sex addicts will tend to prioritize their acting out behavior over certain other important responsibilities. So it's not uncommon for sex addicts to be acting out when they're supposed to be working. Sometimes they get fired. It's not uncommon for sex addicts to be acting out when they are supposed to be at one of their kids' events. So if you are neglecting your responsibilities to go attend to your sexual needs, that is definitely a sign that you could be dealing with a sexual addiction. Number 5, using sex as a coping mechanism. We call this maladaptive coping. In other words, addicts haven't learned to effectively cope with certain stressors in life, whether it be anxiety, depression, fear, or just speaking up. Somewhere in life, usually early on, I am convinced that they have learned keeping secrets is the better way to go. It's the safer avenue to go. Again, this isn't an effort to make excuses for their behavior. It's just to help you understand that there are reasons for why they do what they do, which is usually based in some sense of survival, fear, and the lack of self-worth, which is largely what their recovery journey will focus on. Number 6, intense feelings of guilt, shame, or regret following sexual experiences. Sex is supposed to be a beautiful encounter. It's supposed to be fun and pleasurable. But when you're utilizing it irresponsibly and repetitively, it often leads to people feeling guilty or shameful about their behavior. And also because they know that they're hurting somebody they care about, as these people are often in relationships and they are keeping this behavior secret. It's important to note when it comes to a full-grown addiction, addicts often aren't even enjoying the experience as they're having it. The sexually compulsive behavior has gone from a desire to feel good so I don't feel bad, and now it's just become about not feeling bad at all, even if I feel nothing. But as stated, when the deed is done, they often end up feeling even worse. Number 7, engaging in secretive and deceptive behavior. I also addressed this in the previous video where I talk about secrecy and obscurity. As I just had mentioned, addicts typically live a life of secrecy. For some reason, it just doesn't make sense to be open, honest, and transparent. Deception comes in to help keep the secret secret. That's where we often see behaviors like gaslighting. I did an entire series on the 12 types of gaslighting, which again, I'll make sure to put a link at the top of your screen and you can click that and watch that at your leisure. There are 5 videos in that series, and I really think you'll get a lot out of them. But on that note, not all gaslighters are addicts, but I would venture to say that most addicts are using gaslighting to help keep the secret secret. But in a nutshell, one way you can tell if your partner is gaslighting you is if they are making you feel crazy, even though you know you're quite sane. But as mentioned, gaslighting and other types of deceptive behavior, it's all an effort to just keep people off their trail, and it helps keep the secret secret. Because without secrecy, the addiction can't live. Number 8, risking physical and emotional harm. Addicts do this in various ways. They can do this by acting out at work and putting their jobs and livelihood at risk. They can do this by having unprotected sex with multiple partners at risk of catching an STI and passing that on to their actual partner. But they can also just do this by having chronic affairs or being caught up in something we call love addiction and risking the stability and safety of their families. They know this behavior is risky. They know what they are risking, but yet they do it anyways. That is often a telltale sign that we could be dealing with a sexual addiction. Number 9, relational problems. Has the acting out behavior caused significant relational problems, whether it be in your committed couple relationship, whether it be with your children, or it could even be with extended family and friends? When the sexually compulsive behavior continues to create these types of relational problem, you have to ask yourself, is there something more to what I'm dealing with here? And the final symptom, number 10, is failure to stop despite consequences. So in other words, when the addict or sexually compulsive person has been caught and they have faced consequences and yet they continue to do it, which again might reflect a hijacked brain, which indicates we might be dealing with something more than simply sexually compulsive behaviors or poor decision making. We might actually be dealing with a sexual addiction. So those are the 10 signs and symptoms of sex addiction, originally published by the IITAP organization. It's important to note that not one of these alone would ever indicate that this is a sex addiction. Therapists are actually looking for a combination of these. That's why seeking out a therapist that is trained to work with sex addicts and sexually compulsive behavior is important, because the last thing we want to do is jump to the conclusion that this is a sex addiction when it actually might be something else. We want to be very careful about assigning that label too quickly. I hope all this was helpful. I encourage you to please subscribe to our channel. Again, don't forget to ring the bell to be notified when more of these videos are posted. Also, please check out the description of this video. I usually try to put in lots of different links and resources so that you can have those available to you. We are truly trying to get this information into the hands of people so that they have the resources available so they can get better from this. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you back next time.